Welcome to Tea Time, my friends, a place where I muse about my gender transition experience and in the process aim to comfort and inspire others to a greater level of self-awareness. I am Artemis, in this video enjoying a cup of powdered sencha matcha green tea blended with coconut milk, so a breakfast-style tea. And in one of the first interviews that I was the subject of by another content creator called Boldly Ambivalent, as he usually does, he brought up a great moral conundrum that I think is worthy of exploring some more, and that was catalyzed by the question, is the practice of passing as the opposite sex a form of lying? And if so, what are the consequences of this and how do we address it? For anyone who doesn't know, passing, as it refers to transgenderism, is when an individual who is undergoing transition is seen at a glance by the public at large as the sex they are transitioning to, which is opposite of the one they were born. As is customary for the channel, let's first brush up on the definition of lying, because concise language is important in order to formulate a position to discuss. The Oxford Dictionary definition of lying: I am a 6-foot-tall, well-muscled, and baritone voiced fine specimen of a human. I'm just kidding. To lie is to make an untrue statement with the intent to deceive and to create a false or misleading impression. So, there are two major ways to go about lying. There is the obvious one we all know, which is to utter words in such a way that they blatantly oppose reality. Then, there is the second way, which is to knowingly create a false or misleading impression, which can also be called lying by omission. This one is best exemplified by the crime of being an accessory. If you know someone committed a crime and do not disclose this information, you are lying by omission. It is in this second way of lying that technically transgender people are committing all the time. We are creating a false or misleading impression by presenting as one sex when we are, in fact, the opposite. So, yes, you heard me. Passing is lying. On this channel, I really try to bridge gaps with both sides of the aisle. So the first step to doing that is to validate the facts, no matter whose argument it supports. So many are concerned with trying not to be the bad guy, trying not to be wrong, trying to win the argument that we do not bear ourselves to the truth, and try to manipulate the conversation without acknowledging valid concerns, which shows no empathy and instead is self-serving, and it often results in more defensiveness. I know, I've been guilty of it. I'm no saint. It's a regular practice in self-discipline to participate in conversation with the intent to cooperate. The key to success with that also starts with choosing someone else who is capable of the same, or else you're showing up to a gunfight with a knife, as the expression goes. But that's another topic, at least noteworthy to mention. Oh, so where were we? Yes, the sneaky transgender people lying about their natal sex. So why does this matter for people who are pointing this fact out? A couple of reasons from different angles that we are going to try to address here. The first reason is that as humans, our evolutionary biology dictates that we are keen to detect when deceit or cheating happens. For more on this and many other fascinating insights, I would highly recommend listening to the Evolutionary Biology lecture series from Stanford University by Robert Sapolsky, available here on YouTube, which I'll link below. This deeply wired feature of our brains exists because it became an advantage to survival here as a social species. So when that blip happens on the radar, it often has measurable consequences. If someone is deceiving you, it's a threat to survival. At least, that's how the brain reads it. And that is hard to come back from without massive cognitive effort. While giving this hurdle its proper respect, let's reason with it a little bit, though. There are many examples of lying by omission that occur that do not affect the day-to-day social operation of life, and as such do not require that someone disclose those particular details. For instance, someone who wishes to project higher financial status in order to land a better paying job may dress and carry themselves a certain way to indicate that they are on the level they wish to attain, driving a car they can barely afford, and wearing clothes worth more than any asset they own. This is a sort of fake it till you make it strategy, and often we treat, or at the very least judge, people who look like this very differently in a positive way than someone who is unkempt or driving a beater of a vehicle. The lie only becomes a problem in intimate scenarios if the discrepancy is not disclosed. The typical scenario being the guy who rents a Ferrari and an Armani suit for the night just to land a notch in his headboard when he's actually financially broke. The equivalent in the transgender world would be someone who presents themselves as one sex just to get in bed with someone who is exclusively attracted to that sex without disclosing the truth. This is often how certain trans women, especially who employ this tactic, land themselves in situations where they are assaulted when the pants are dropped and the truth is revealed. I would venture to guess that this is a small number of the already small population of trans women, but we have to keep in mind that this scenario is pretty traumatizing to the person who was purposefully misled. And this is where the concern of being lied to by a transgender person is validated by a concerned populace, and a fear is so much more easily validated than safety. There is also an evolutionary mechanism for this in place because there is heavy incentive in the brain to focus on survival, and things that are feared are things that threaten survival. The fear that you would be misled by a transgender person about sex in order to be manipulated into sex makes the big lie, let's call it, all the more concerning, even if it happens in a very small portion of circumstances. Again, I feel that the only way up from here is acknowledging these concerns and then separating them as a predatory minority from the rest of the transgender community. Let's go to the flip side of the example I've been using of someone who is faking it till they make it, surrounding themselves with the accessories of success in order to project the level they wish to achieve. When they succeed, they have a higher likelihood of contributing more positively to society, and at the very least have a confidence which can lead to a healthier individual, depending on what they do with it, of course. The same applies to a transgender individual who is projecting to the world that they feel most confident and would like to be seen as. Their insecurity is greatly reduced, and with a greater sense of confidence, they stand a much better chance at being a productive member of society. I talk about this in my video, Overcoming Objections to the Transgender Experience, link above. It's better, in my opinion, to have someone as a confident and functioning member of society than a disordered and dysfunctional individual forced to remain with their natural-born bits and pieces just for the sake of sexual congruity, at least for the minority of the population that this condition affects. The second reason that someone may be concerned with the big lie is not in the lie itself, because as we have discussed, it is an intimate detail that really doesn't have a place in day-to-day social operation or discussions. The trouble comes when there is more than just a fleeting exchange with someone and there is some kind of sustained interaction that leads to building rapport. Let me first clearly state, though, that I believe in disclosing your sex immediately in a situation with a potential sexual partner. This is a non-negotiable duty, period. Link above for that video. When the truth is revealed in all other scenarios of relations, there may be a feeling of betrayal by the unknowing party because they didn't know a detail about that person's identity that is crucial in the context of our evolutionary biology. Whether we like it or not, we do treat men and women differently on a subconscious level. This doesn't have to be the horribly oppressive and detrimental level on a widespread scale that many radical ideologues wail about. It's simply a feature of our biology to subtly judge how we should interact with someone in a slightly different way that may prove more optimal based on hundreds of thousands of years of innate knowledge and repetitive interactions. Of course, it isn't always useful, but it's there nonetheless. And so when we learn that someone is not the sex we thought they were, it trips that very primal system within us at a double whammy deep level and can cause a more visceral feeling of betrayal. Not everyone experiences this, though. I've told a number of people about being transgender many months or years even after first meeting them, and many don't skip a beat. They just don't care. For the people who do get hung up on hearing the truth, they tell me that they felt bad, that I had not told them before, and were panicked that perhaps they may have said something in the past that I might have found to be offensive relating to LGBT issues, and were actually quite understanding that it wasn't a detail that warranted disclaiming in the beginning. In any case, in my experience, it has gone a long way in just being respectful, having integrity and empathy for other people's position that avoided those primitive feelings of betrayal when the truth was eventually revealed. That being said, I always avoided the obvious form of lying we initially defined in this video when it came to concealing the detail that I am transgender. The line of work that I currently do sees me inside people's homes for hours at a time, often getting to know them and having conversations with them. When topics surrounding LGBT issues come up, I am very careful not to speak an untruth, because if I do and the truth comes out someday, that will damage the relationship, and that is important to keep in mind. This careful choosing of words has resulted in many cold sweats, and in some cases, an impromptu session of disclosure because, as George Washington is mythically purported to have said, I cannot tell a lie. You learn really quickly how to be a very concise communicator and just how much you can say without saying very much at all, and also how little people are paying attention to the actual words you're using. And I have quite a few stories about that. Anyway, while in general, lying in both of its forms is frowned upon in society, in the world of navigating the intersection of morality and complex social nuance, there is much compromise to be had. The practice of passing in the world of transgenderism is lying, but perhaps in the discussion of that fact, we can find the grain of truth that sprouts common ground.